Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. Keep in mind, I'm not gay. This video is about the controversy in regards to the 10 Commandments being posted in the classrooms in Louisiana schools. Now, first of all, I've proven definitively that I'm the idea that Christ is superimposed on. I've also proven that the Bible is something that is by Baal. Baal is the author of confusion. God is not the author of confusion. Bear with me. If I was to break down the Bible for you and help you see what it's really getting at, it would be a pretty long process. In fact, I've been doing that. I have thousands of videos where I do just that. It's clear, and it's clear the whole time, that there's people who have preconceived notions. They have misconceptions in regards to what the Bible is saying. They interpret it differently. And they come from a long line of people quite often that interpret it in a way that's incorrect. And they're very angry. And they have various white subcultures and token minority subcultures of whitewashed people. So the reason why these people would reject having the 5 pillars of Islam in their classrooms, but they wouldn't reject having the 10 Commandments, is because they're racist. Okay, not everyone gets the same thing from the 10 Commandments. And they use it as a symbol of white cultural supremacy. We all know conservatives intend to enforce white culture and try to whitewash people and try to put themselves above people in a way that's unfair. We know they turn a blind eye to sabotage, they downplay racism, and they pretend that trickle-down economics magically works, but it does not work. We've seen it time and time again with the Republican presidents, with the legislation. Basically, the system we have is trickle-down economics, and they take a small amount of money, and they exaggerate how much it is, and they waste it and say, hey, when we spend money, it doesn't really help. These things need to be understood. You know, I'm not a political person. I talk about the truth, and these are the motives of the right wing when they put the 10 Commandments in the classroom. So I have my own book that I wrote. It's actually written by someone who can prove that he's dealing in universal pinpoint and moral precision. We don't know who wrote the Bible. We don't know who wrote the 10 Commandments. People interpret them differently. My book is direct. For example, on page 3 or so, in the chapter of the points of reference for injustice, we go down to the section of sayings that should be in the Bible, as they are more direct, and even a child should be able to come up with them. Even in the Bible, the disciples were complaining to Jesus as a character in the story that he wasn't speaking plainly, that the parables are hard to understand. In Isaiah, it says that God wanted Isaiah to confuse people. Says who? Why would God expect us to trust the scribes in a book where in Jeremiah 8:8 it says that the false pen of the scribes have handled it falsely? And strangely enough, I don't know why this is. Okay, I've been looking into the linguistics and the etymology and the lexicon, the wordplay and the roots of words for a while. Okay, I'm not an expert on the subject. Nobody really is. Okay, but for whatever reason, the 8:8 in Jeremiah 8:8 is used for the HH, for people who are white supremacists who are hailing Hitler. The H is hail, and the second H is Hitler. So that is, might be a sign from God. It might be a coincidence, but for whatever reason, that's there. Right where it says in a definitive manner that the lying pen of the scribes handles the word falsely. It doesn't clarify which ones. Who? The ones who wrote Jeremiah, perhaps? The ones who wrote the whole book? And the logical assumption with the evidence given in a book where Christ, as a character in the story, says to his disciples, why don't you judge for yourselves what is right? He says to the people in the book, why don't you judge for yourselves what is right? Well, based on the evidence. As a wise and insightful and discerning person with sense, I must judge that it is not right to assume that the Bible comes from God. But we can know that universal pinpoint and moral precision does come from God. There's no other way to look at it. There's a bunch of religious books everywhere. and a bunch of empires and tribes and groups that pushed them. And when we look at what they're doing right now in the world, in the face of AI and brain hacking, they're politicking, they're controlled opposition, they're direct oppressors, etc., etc. They're everything but doing the right thing. And the Bible says you know them by their fruit. The fruit of the churches, the fruit of the Bible is a bunch of people who disagree on things, and none of them are doing the right thing. And the one person who reads the Bible consistently that's doing the right thing, me, okay, I've written my own book and I point to that book. I tell you the truth, my book is morality from God. People sought to interfere with it, but in the form it's in right now, it's direct. It tells you what to do and what to not to do in a very straightforward way that no one could deny. And even the sayings make it clear. The first saying is, when one is the offspring of the wicked and they have no vowed redeemer, it is better for them to die than to continue their ill-gotten life. Some people are saying, what do we do now in this world? What do we do? Well, you rally to me. Why? Because you're better off dead than not rallying to me, because you're just chasing ill-gotten gains. Pretty straightforward, right? There's no other way to look at it. What is an ill-gotten life? You have to live in the construct to miss this. That's why in the book it also says there's no truth outside the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. Why? Because in the white man's construct, the token minority construct, people are confused. Right? They're looking at it in terms of, what are ill-gotten gains to the Republicans or liberals or libertarians or to the churches, instead of just what's obviously universally true. You can't colonize people, steal their land, sexually control them, control their breeding, massacre them, drug them, on, and say, hey, look at us, we're the most qualified now. That's ill-gotten gains. And you can't serve that psychology without embracing those ill-gotten gains. So I also say in my book that after my flesh dies, there's no hope. There's no other way to look at it. So people won't be like, well, what if it said this? What if it said this? Well, you know that after he dies, you can't be right with God. So it's straightforward. And even a child should be able to look at this thing, living in reality, and say, what the hell is going on here? Why do people keep reproducing? So when we look at the 10 Commandments in the classroom, should they be in the classroom? No. At first it was a little confusing. I was inclined to agree with the Republicans, but I said, there's a reason why, I said that the Bible is Bible. Okay, the Lady of Byblos, right? It's said to come from the word Byblos, meaning book. Lady of Byblos is Balat. Okay, one of the balls. The enemies of God. And Bel's Greek equivalent is Zeus, the king of the gods in Zeus, the king of the cultures in Greece. Excuse me. The king of the gods in Greece, the king of the cultures in Greece, and Jupiter in Rome, the king of the gods in Rome, and the king of the cultures in Rome, including the cultures that gave you the Bible. No matter what they say, Roman thinking was dominating that society and not moral thinking. Roman thinking was dominating their churches, their bishops, their councils, and not moral thinking. Just like Roman thinking is dominating, the neo-Roman thinking is dominating the churches and the councils of churches in America, the mosques and the synagogues, and not moral thinking. We see that continuity. We see that similarity. We see those parallels. There's no other way to look at it. So why my book? Because I'm the top martial artist ever possible, using universal pinpoint moral precision, using a valid scale. No one could possibly beat me, in ancient times or in modern history. And no one ever be able to pass what I've done because of tech, breeding, cheating, and generational ill-gotten gains. Going back to that saying, when one is the offspring of the wicked and they have no valid redeemer, it is better for them to die than to continue their ill-gotten life. Okay? Your breeding doesn't allow you to be a valid person, to be a valid martial artist anyway. Why are you still alive? And when we analyze genetics and we do the comparison, no one's genes are like mine. No one can naturally do world record speed like I've done, not even my brothers. You're more likely to see a pig that flies faster than a falcon than to see somebody who could surpass me naturally at martial arts at any point of history. We got to look at the tree. We got to look at the grouping. I'm from the most skilled martial art race and tribe, and from the royal family that ruled over them. And there's a reason why none of them can beat me now, and none of their ancestors could beat me, and no one else from any other group. Because I am the top. because God set me apart to be the point where righteous and focused intensity, mental clarity, moral, mental, spiritual, romantic clarity comes at its pinnacle. And so I should be the one writing the book. Not some people you don't even know who they are. Not some people who collectively couldn't beat me at martial arts. 10 of them where I sliced through them like a hot knife in butter. The David and Goliath proof in their own book. This day I will strike you down and cut off your head, and the whole world will know there's a God in Israel. On this moment, in my entire life, I have struck down all the opposition view and placed myself irrefutably and permanently above them in reality. Regardless of what their books say, what their media says, in reality. God's opinion is what matters, not yours. In reality. I have struck down their arguments and cut off their heads, figuratively speaking. And everyone who lives in reality knows that God chose me. You have one teacher, one author. That is me, the Messiah. None of you are qualified to determine the validity of the Bible. Only I am. None of you should be called teacher. Like it says in your book, you have one teacher. That's me. My version of the 10 Commandments should be in every school. Not the white man's. Not the one given the stamp of approval by the white man and backed up by whitewashed people. Not the Arab man's. Not the Jews. Not the LGBT community. Not some multicultural committee. But the one right guy, the one guy doing the right thing, the most moral person that ever lived. So when you figure out what you want your kids to learn, you want them to learn from cowards who teach them a book that says that the lying pen of the scribes handles the word falsely, and it says in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Lord is a warrior. It's pointing to me, not to the authors of the book. How hypocritical could you people be?